What's going on, everybody? America Football Network here with another video today. And today we're bringing you our BYU prediction and preview video. But before we get started, make sure you guys like and subscribe. Comment those thoughts and opinions down below. Help me hit that goal of 900 subscribers by the end of June. I appreciate all the support we've got. Check out the description for links to the podcast website and our college football roundup channel that we do with the football expert. Also, help him get those watch hours so he can hit that monetization goal. But let's go ahead and get started with today's video. So the BYU Cougars last year went 8-5. Lost a few close games. Lost to East Carolina 27-24. Lost to Notre Dame 28-20. But they also won some close wins against SMU in the bowl game 24-23. Beat at Boise State 31-28. Beat Baylor in overtime 26-20. So a pretty competitive season for BYU last year. Never really was out of any games that they lost except for at Liberty and, well, I guess 3 of the 4 games they lost, losing 41-20 at Oregon, 52-35 against Arkansas, and 41-14 at Liberty. But even a lot of the games they won were very close and competitive. Almost pulled off that big game against Notre Dame, lost that one 28-20. And they bring in some new pieces. They only return 4 starters on offense, 6 on defense. They lose their quarterback, Jaron Hall, last year, but they do bring in Keaton Slovis, a guy who came out of high school with some talent, has never really done anything whatsoever in college. But we'll see. Maybe this is the year that he can do something. They will be in the Big 12, as this is the first year they'll be in the Big 12. So they'll have a Big 12 schedule. We'll see how they fare in that. But let's go ahead and get started with today's video. So with the schedule prediction. So they start out week 1 against the Sam Houston Bearcats, who have jumped up from the FCS to Division I this year. And I think BYU gets the win here. I think Sam Houston is a good FCS team. I don't think they're ready to compete with some of these bigger D1 FBS schools yet. I think that I'm pretty sure they're in Conference USA. Let me check that. Yep, in Conference USA. So I think they may have some success in Conference USA this year, but I think year 1 making the jump, it's going to be tough. They're not going to BYU and coming out there with a win. I just think BYU is a better team. And, this could help. These first 2 games for sure are really going to help Keaton Slovis and some of these new pieces get into the mix at BYU. I think the Cougars start off 1-0, and then against Southern Utah, I think they pick up another win. I don't like Southern Utah. They're not at the level they need to be able to compete with BYU. I don't think this game needs much discussion, but 2 nice games for Slovis in this offense to get going, as well as some new pieces on the defensive side of the ball. I do like that. From a schedule standpoint, they start them off easy. They get the, kind of baby step into the season. But week 3 that ends as they go on the road to Arkansas, and I think they lose this game. They played Arkansas at home last year, lost 52-35. I see something similar to that. I just don't see a way that BYU wins this game. Arkansas is too talented and too physical to be on. Like, Arkansas is going to run for probably 250 plus yards on BYU. And I don't particularly think it will be very close either of a matchup. I think Arkansas wins this game big, making BYU 2-1 on the season before they go on the road to Kansas. Again, I think this is a loss. I think Kansas is just too good of a team. They were, I think it was 6 straight wins for them last year, and then they lost like the last 5. They went on a 5-game losing streak and lost 5 of the last 7 or something like that, 5 of the last 6. Something, or lost 6 of the last 7, something like that. But that was mostly due to the fact that Jalen Daniels was injured. Jason Bean is a pretty good quarterback, but he's just not gonna be what Jalen Daniels is. And so with Daniels getting leaving with the injury, that made it tough for Kansas to really continue their winning. Bean is the guy who's not going to lose you a game, but he's also not going to make plays to win a game, and that's what Jalen Daniels can do, is make those plays to win you a game. And so I think Kansas is a much better team than BYU, especially when you add in the fact that BYU has to go on the road to Kansas. I think that they're going to lose this game pretty similarly to the Arkansas game, I would imagine. Then they get Cincinnati at home. I think you get a win here. Another of one of these 4 additions to the Big 12 this year in Cincinnati. And I think that Cincinnati is a solid team. I'm interested to see what Satterfield does there, especially considering he has Emory Jones at quarterback. But I do think BYU at home, I'm taking the Cougars in this game. Although I do think these are pretty evenly matched teams. I think the edge for BYU is that it's a home game on a Friday night. Cincinnati's going to have a short week. They're going to have to travel all the way out there. So I like BYU in this game. Then you get a bye week before you go on the road to TCU. I think this is a loss. The Horned Frogs lose a lot from last year, but I still think under Sonny Dykes, they have a very good head coach. They still have some talent out there. We'll see what Chandler Morris does at quarterback. To be Chandler Morris and Chance Nolan, the Oregon State transfer quarterback into TCU. So we'll see what they can do there. They do return 8 starters off of that defense, only 3 on the offense, but I still think TCU is a much more talented team than BYU is. I think they have a better quarterback, and I think the TCU wins this game and, just even more of an edge with the fact that it's at home. Then they get Texas Tech at home. I think they win this game. A lot of people think Texas Tech are going to be really good this year, and I can see that, but I feel like BYU is going to win one of those games they shouldn't, and I think this is probably the game, one of the games right here, is getting a win against Texas Tech. BYU always seems to be one of those teams that if they don't win a game they should have, they get close to winning one. They did it twice last year at Boise State and against Baylor. I mean, you could probably even say against SMU in the bowl game as well. I can't remember who all opted out for either side in that game, but they always kind of win, 1 or 2 of those games a year that they're not supposed to win. I think this is one. With Texas Tech traveling to BYU, I think that BYU will get the win in this game. Then they get Texas on the road. I think you lose this game. Texas is probably going to be my pick to win the Big 12. I just think Texas they're just much too talented. They have a lot better of a quarterback in Quinn Ewers, who's a potential Heisman candidate. And I think, going on the road to Austin, that's a tough place to play. I think BYU loses this game pretty bad. Then they go on the road to West Virginia. I think they lose this game as well. West Virginia is not in a very good spot necessarily to say, as I don't really necessarily like where they're at, but I do think that they're better than BYU, especially with BYU having to go all the way across the country on the road to Mountaineer Field in Morgantown, West Virginia, which is going to be a pretty tough environment because they show out for their team, whether they're good or not. So I think West Virginia gets the win here. I just think they're a better team than BYU. Then they get Iowa State at home. I think this is a win. Again, one of those games that you could say they're not really supposed to win. I could see it. I think Iowa State is a solid team. They return 8 starters on offense, 7 on defense, but you kind of got to take those numbers into perspective. They're returning 8 starters and on offense and 7 starters on defense from a team that went 4-8 last year. So what really happens with that, I don't really know. I do think BYU and Iowa State are pretty evenly matched teams, but with this game at BYU, I'm giving the Cougars the edge. Then they get Oklahoma at home. I think this is a loss. I think Dylan Gabriel and that Sooners offense is just going to be too much for BYU. And it could be a bit of a tough match going to Lavelle Edwards Stadium, but we'll see with that. I just think Oklahoma is a much more talented team and a better team than BYU. and you could even argue better coached, although I don't know that Brent Venables has proven enough to necessarily say he's a better coach than Satake. Then to close out your season, you go on the road to Oklahoma State. I think you lose this game as well. I just think Oklahoma State is a better talented team. Gundy is definitely a better coach. Mike Gundy, definitely a better coach, and I just don't see you beating Oklahoma State. Now, they do lose their quarterback in Spencer Sanders, so we'll see what really happens with all that. But I do think that Oklahoma State is going to be better coached. They're going to be just a better overall talented team than BYU is. But not a bad year for BYU in their first year in the Big 12. I have them going 5-7 overall with 3 conference wins, so 3-6 in the conference. So not a bad season for your first year joining the Big 12. It's going to be a little bit more difficult than the independent route, but it's a good move at the end of the day for BYU. And I think eventually, if they can get recruiting up a little bit, that they can be somewhat competitive in the Big 12. I do believe that. But that wraps up today's video. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Comment your thoughts and opinions down below. Help me hit that goal of 900 subscribers by the end of June. I appreciate all of you guys watching, and I will see you next time.